Wonderful. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, Sat Sri Akal, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Vanakkam, from wherever you're joining. Wonderful to see all these lovely faces here on this first workshop as part of the global cohort. We have with us Mr. Paul Singh joining us from India today. We are lucky that this time around he's in India today, so we are more closer to him in distance. Like as they say in cricket, sir, you are the opening batsman. So we are very glad that you are the opening batsman for this year's global cohort. My name is Pradeep Yoraj. I'm a volunteer with the Thai University program. I'm joining you from Coimbatore, which is in the southern part of India. Today's topic is to do with marketing and taking your company to the customers. And we have an exceptional gentleman whom I will right now have the privilege of putting on spotlight. Who will take you through the journey. Is the spotlight on? Yeah, wonderful. The spotlight is there. So we have Mr. Paul Singh. Mr. Paul Singh is the Chief Revenue Officer at Tata Cognitive Solutions. Before I introduce him, I will put in a poll, and maybe if you could log your polling session is inactive. Oops, why is my polling session? Okay, Aryan, you'll have to stop your logging in. My polling is not getting active. So anyway, we will get the polling active in a minute. Dr. Singh is an entrepreneur, CEO, and advisor to many startups in the mobile and SaaS areas. He has been lucky to get many wins. In his own words, he has been lucky to get many wins along the way, including 4 successful exits as founder. Whereas going public on NASDAQ, ExpressoLogic being acquired by CA, Cylon being acquired by Hyphen, and Internetware acquired by Symantec. Helping entrepreneurs is his passion, and some of the ways he does that is by teaching next generation entrepreneurs at Northeastern University and UC Berkeley, mentoring at Google Launchpad, and by contributing his time to Thai Silicon Valley, where he is also a board member. Before getting into startups, he worked for 10 plus years in various marketing, product management, and business development roles at Ascend, Lucent, Castel, Cisco, Sun Microsystems, and 3Com. That's kind of a lineup of the who's who of the corporate world. His specialties are building and growing companies, marketing, business development, and M&A. Thank you so much, Mr. Singh, for joining us today. Let me check if my polls are working. If the poll is not working, we will get into the session. The floor is all yours. The format is Mr. Singh will take you through his presentation. Do you want people to ask questions in the middle, Dr. Singh, or do you want to keep the Q&A at the end?
Please. No, ask as the material is going on. And so definitely interrupt me whenever you like. And I'd like to answer those questions there and then. And if I am going to come back to that topic, then I will tell you so. So that's perfectly fine.
Wonderful. And
how much time I have?
You have 75 minutes. We would love to spend the next 3-4 hours with you, but we will let you take us through the call.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and really glad to see this great group of entrepreneurs. And I had a chance to read some of the summaries that you guys sent. Very, very impressive. It seems to get better and better every year. I remember doing this class last year as well. And this year seems like you guys are even going further. And so congratulations. I think it takes a lot to get to this stage. So great job so far. So I'm going to make this a little bit, trying to make it more interactive, which is why I said if there are any questions, you should stop me, because that's how our out of. And today we are going to talk about sales and marketing, 2 of the subjects which most entrepreneurs who come out of engineering background seem to hate. But without that, no business. So we're going to talk about as a sales team, what does it take to build marketing? What are the key highlights that we should all sort of be aware? And my feeling is that most of what I'm going to cover, many of these topics are probably known to you. But if I can give you 1 or 2 nuggets that you have not thought about, then I think it will be worth it for me as well as for you, I hope. So I want to apologize in advance. I've had fever since morning, so I'm not at the top of my voice and all that. So if there are times you're not able to hear, please let me know. And I think I won't be able to see the chat as much as if you have a question, please raise your hand, then I'll be able to see it much more so. Okay.
And in case someone puts a Q&A or question on the
sharing my screen.
Yeah. Dr. Singh, yeah, you can share. Maybe you'll need to switch off your video because I think your network is pretty low.
Okay.
And Dr. Singh, can you hear me?
That. So I'm going to. I'm not a doctor, so.
Oh yeah, Mr. Singh. Wonderful. So what I'll do is, in case there's a question, I will unmute and ask the question. Teams, if you have a question, just put it either raise your hands or put it on the chat. Thank you so much.
All right. So just my background, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I founded 5 companies. I've been lucky to take 1 company public. 3 of them got acquired, and 1 didn't make it. And with each of them, you have a great learning that you get. And hopefully I'll share my experiences with you today. So let's see. Okay. So let's talk about selling 101. I think the first thing that I'm going to tell you is that your customers don't care about you. We're going to talk about how sales has changed. It is important for all of us to understand what a sales funnel is. And in sales, relationships matter, activity matters, and listening matters. So let's talk about each of these things one at a time. So this is from the master himself, that your customers really don't care about you. Most of the time as entrepreneurs, we tend to think that what I'm doing is the most important thing in the world. And believe me, it is. But it is most important thing to you. But your customers really care about how their lives are going to get impacted. What are you going to do for them? If you are selling a product which is solving a particular pain that they have, then they want to know, do you solve that pain or not? And how effectively do you solve that pain? And if it's a product where you are trying to create a new habit, then also you got to project as well. And so we'll talk more about that. And I'm sure you've read this quote, so I'm not going to read it. So I'm sure many of you know these pictures when you see on the screen. I think irrespective of whichever country you're from, probably all of those are familiar ones, especially the one at the bottom. Anybody wants to tell me what the one at the bottom is? Anyone? Unmute yourself and reply.
Trevor Moore.
Sorry?
Trevor, the comedian, Trevor Moore.
No, but what does it represent? What does
a car
picture represent?
salesman.
Yeah, used car salesman. So the used car salesmen have been, given the bad rap, I guess, and this is what we associate selling with. This is why many of us who are studious and very good entrepreneurs who technically know a lot of the stuff think that selling is not for them. And this is really not what selling is today. Sales has changed. So does anybody know why has sales changed? Anybody wants to tell me why has sales undergone a massive change? Anybody wants to unmute and tell me?
Yes, sir. I think the technology has took over. That's why
Sorry?
I like this way. So the technology has came in place now. So now everything is digital and online. So it impacted the sales as well.
So you are right, not fully, but you're on the right path, which is that what has happened is in the past, whoever had the information was the person who, had the upper hand. But thanks to this smartphone in our pockets, we all have the information. When you go to a used car salesman today, you probably more about that car than he or she knows. You probably know its history, you probably know its pricing, you probably know their cost and everything there is to know, how many accidents has it had and so on. It is so much easier for you to be able to do that. So as a result, the job of a salesperson isn't because they have information. So their role now is to figure out how do they solve the problem that you as customers have. And that's the new challenge. And so the power in sales has shifted to consumer because the information is now available to everyone. So can anybody tell me what the sales mantra ABC stands for? You can either unmute yourself or you can just give me your hand, raise your hand and I'll ask you. Either way is fine. Anybody?
Always be calling.
Not quite. 2 out of 3.
So,
Sorry, you cut out. I couldn't hear it.
sir, B for a business and C for an customers.
No. It is always be closing. Why is closing important? Because if you don't close, you don't get a purchase order, customer never pays you, in the end, no sales happen. So the mantra used to be always be closing. In fact, that also got changed because in the past, salespeople were always very pushy, right? Like I showed you those diagrams, those pictures on the top. And the reason they were pushy is they were always incentivized to close, close, close. In fact, I would recommend very strongly, if you guys Google on YouTube, you can say Glengarry Glen Ross is a movie in which there is a 2.5 to 3 minute clip, which summarizes what sales used to be, where in the salesperson who sold the most was given a car, and the salesperson who came in second was given some bunch of small knives, and everybody else got fired. So that's what used to be the sales process. But this book that I referred to in this by a gentleman, Daniel Pink, To Sell is Human, and I would recommend very strongly as an entrepreneur for you to, read this book or just watch the summary of that book that some people have done, because there are some really interesting concepts. And one concept that is important is that the new ABC of sales has changed. Does anybody know what the new ABC might be? What is the A that matters today? Anybody? No? Nobody wants to attempt it? By this time, some of you might have already Googled and gotten the answer too.
Affability is an answer. Always be carrying as one answer on the chat.
Okay. Well, not really. A stands for attunement, and B for buoyancy, and C for clarity. Now, you might wonder, what the heck does that have to do with sales? So anybody wants to tell me what does attunement means in terms of sales? Anyone?
Does that mean like tailoring your pitch or your sell to your customer and listening to their needs?
Right on. You are perfectly correct. Attunement is trying to be in tune with your customers, with their needs, right? You have to understand their perspective. That is the key. Now, I know many of you are students of physics and know the word buoyancy. What does that mean? Why do I care in sales context? Anybody wants to tell me?
Buoyancy is floating, right?
Yeah, buoyancy is if you take a ball and you push it down, what's going to happen? It's going to come up with even a higher force and try to come up, right? So
Yes.
what does that got to do with sales?
Is the buoyancy in sales the ability to pivot to, if you can't get that particular sale accomplished, at least have them walk away with something?
Not quite, but you're close. You're close. So the whole idea of the buoyancy, which is something as an entrepreneur you should get used to, you are going to get many, many no's before you're going to get a yes. And if you give up at your no's, you're never going to get a yes. If you remember, Airbnb, while trying to raise their first round, talked to about 110 investors before one of them said yes. Average person gives up after 4 or 5 tries. So according to Daniel Pink, that generally you have 9 times failure before you get 1 success, which means you have to be really in tune with, you have to be really committed to that idea, and you have to learn to pick yourself up from a failure, because you think that is a failure, but it's probably not. But that's how we entrepreneurs perceive it. Every time I try to sell something and somebody doesn't buy, I look at this as my failure, right? And so therefore, that's how we perceive the market to be. And the sales rule is that, hey, you're going to see this a lot of time. Get used to it. Don't take it personally. And then what has clarity got to do with it? Sophia came on my screen. Sophia, you want to tell us what clarity might mean?
Yeah, I think clarity might be about focusing your service. I feel like it might be better to be not jack of trades, master of none, but just having clarity over what you provide and how that fulfills the need, maybe.
I think you are on the right track. Remember, we talked about when we started that there is a poster that is being done to describe what you do. That clarity of message and the shortness of message is the important, very, very important thing that every company has to figure it out. Why? Because we all are living in a Twitter generation. We don't have the time and a bandwidth to really listen to some long thing, and we want to understand it very, very quickly and move on. So Hassan has his hand raised. So Hassan, can you ask your question, please?
Yeah, so clarity is like a 10-second elevator pitch. Would you
kind
agree?
of like that. It doesn't even have to be 10 seconds. It could be 2 words for that matter.
Okay.
Right? So when you talk about clarity, when you build a company's pitch, you're going to have both the elevator pitch as well as a pitch when the elevator ride might be too long, as well as for some people where you have to send them an email, which might be a little bit longer, right? So you need all of the above in order to make this right. But the clarity is really important. I mean, some of you guys, all power to you, you have given some really clear answers about what you do. But for others, I am struggling to understand, hey, what do you exactly do? And if you don't get my attention right in the beginning, I may not even want to hear the next part. So this is why it is really, really important that you have the clarity of the message, right? Because in today's world, we have too many things happening around us, and we just don't pay attention. So attunement, understanding the perspective of the buyer. And remember, the buyer has the power. And buoyancy is the ability to stay afloat when you invariably experience a rejection. Heath says at least 3 positive thoughts for every 1 negative thought, but I think he is too optimistic. it's about 9-1. And I will tell you a little bit later on why I say that. And then the next one is the clarity, which is the ability to identify a problem your prospect is experiencing and then explaining how your product or service can help. Okay. Any questions before we move out of this topic? Okay. I'm going to assume there is no question. I don't know if any of you have ever heard the word sales funnel. And sales funnel generally in companies tend to be way more complex than what I have put in here. And in today's world, we say the sales funnel is a circle, and I'll explain why that is the case. But I try to use this as a simple message to explain the whole process of selling, to distill it down in some sense for all of you. So the first part of selling is identifying a suspect. Now you might ask, what is a suspect? And so if I am walking, if let's say you have a store in a mall, anybody looking at your product in the showroom window could be a suspect. They might be a potential buyer. That doesn't mean they are interested yet. They may have a little bit of an interest, so they stopped. As soon as they stop to look, now they are a suspect. Now in our new world, where we talk about electronic world, obviously what matters is, did somebody come to my website? And did they give me some information? So if you think about selling, so I'm sure many of you have gone to stores, and I always like to give the example of the sari store, because I'm always amazed at the salespeople in the Indian sari stores as to how much of a perspective they have in terms of selling. So as soon as a woman walks in, and I would like maybe some ladies here who have been doing this shopping to tell me, how does the salesperson there qualifies you? What do they do to qualify whether they should spend more time with you or not? Anybody? Vamsi name came up here for me. I don't know if Vamsi is ready to tell me a little bit. Or anyone else?
Looking at how they speak, probably like they're asking the prices of the items. Like they'd have like a lot of experience dealing with customers, so they'd probably look at body language and I guess some stuff, and they will probably know if she's gonna buy or no.
You're kind of there, but I don't know. Soumya Shukla, would you like to tell me?
Sana, your hands are raised. You want to go ahead?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Whenever you would go to a sari shop, they would start first of all giving you telling you the qualities of the product they're having or the sari they're having. They would start providing you the qualities of it so that the customer may get attracted to it.
Yeah, but so at the same time, they're trying to qualify you, right? The job of a good salesperson is trying to figure out if I should spend time with Soumya today, or should I spend time with, Joe who walked in, right? So he or she has to determine whether Soumya is likely to be a buyer. And so the first thing they will do is they'll look at, what is Soumya wearing? Does it look like Soumya is likely to buy a 10,000 rupee product or a 1 lakh product? So they're trying to size you. And then they want to ask you some qualifying questions like, oh, what is the occasion for which you want to buy it? What's your budget like? So those are qualification questions to see if you are indeed even a buyer. Now, remember, in the new world of electronic world, we have to replicate all this behavior. And we're going to do it electronically, the same thing, because we just can't do one-on-one like this anymore. And so once I qualify, a buyer is qualified, the next thing, so the buyer then becomes a prospect, which means, yeah, they're interested in buying. I have established a use case where they are interested in this product. Like for many of you where you are talking about some hearing aid for somebody or a Braille, obviously, if a Braille product is for visually impaired person, and if the person, is not visually impaired, maybe they're not even a target customer for you. So that's maybe your qualifying question. Your next qualifying question may be, hey, where is the money going to come from? Are they going to get it from AEP, i.e. the schools are going to finance it, or is it going to be financed directly by them? So once you have done that and they become a prospect, a lot of times, sometimes, women like to shop a lot and they don't necessarily buy the first time they go there and look, because at least I see with my wife, she'll want to see something and then she said, no, let me look at other things and then I'll come back. Now, in the business, it happens a lot. When somebody wants to buy, maybe they're just inquiring, they're trying to figure it out, they're not quite ready. And so you need to create a follow-up. You need to create a view to stay in their face. And in B2B businesses, we use a lot of email communication, or sometimes if you watch a good salesperson, they'll ask you, hey, can I get your number? Even though they know you're not going to buy today, but I'll send you some information or I'll do something. So that's the follow-up wall. And after you do a lot of follow-up, they become your customers. In the old world, we used to stop. When somebody became a customer, we never bothered about them. Not the same way. However, in today's world, there is a very major shift. Even when you guys buy a $5 product from Amazon, you probably spend more hours researching it than the product is worth. So which means a customer reference, a customer saying good thing about you becomes very, very critical. And this is what I call the love wall. The saying goes that if everybody likes your product, but nobody loves it, you're not going to be successful. And how do you express love? How do your customers express love? They express love by talking about your product. And this is why the first few customers are very, very critical. Find customers who are going to love you and not just like you, because in the beginning, you need a lot of love to be successful. So that's a very kind of a quick overview of the funnel, but any questions before I go to the next slide? No? Okay.
So you can unmute yourself and ask questions in case you have any.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Did you ask something? Okay, I guess not. So this is what a typical software as a service company funnel looks like. So this is from an actual company where they had a 50,000 visitors coming per month. And they had put in a self-qualification wall where a customer qualifies themselves by some questions or by what they show interest in. And they call themselves leads. So about 50K got reduced to 10K. And in the business, we have sometimes two kinds of wall. Marketing, it does its job by qualifying the lead, and we call that marketing qualified lead. Now, every company has a different definition for it, so I'm not going to spend time on that unless somebody has any specific questions. But the marketing qualified leads reduce that 10K to 2K. And now sales has its own qualification, and then what we call a sales qualified lead, which is SQL. And my 2K became 400. And when I followed up with customers a lot, I got 100 opportunities. Out of 100 opportunities, only 30 of them became my customers, and only 5 of them become my reference. So think about this. The reason I wanted to tell you is the magnitude of the problem. This is a company that is selling a typical SMB market. Their product sells for anywhere from, $10 per month of a low to about $100 a month per user. And you may buy 4 to 5 users at any time. And so the idea is that you have to start. So in the business, when I am trying to look for 30 customers, I start to work backwards on my math and say, what do I need to do to get 50,000 people to come and look at me? Okay. And we'll talk about that, all the tools in the second part of this presentation. But if there are any questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, Paul, can I come in here?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to put the use case of my company here. Would you just wanted to understand if that is a qualification wall that I'm looking at, or is it a product market fit? So what we do essentially is that we use artificial intelligence to sort of identify respiratory abnormalities through chest x-rays. Why my customers buy into this product essentially is because, I'm breaking, and it is available in ₹100, which is approximately $1. And why my customers buy into it is essentially because of 2 reasons. One, of course, is the fear factor, because people in India trust the machines more than doctors, because the private players in the market, we don't have social security here, and the insurance penetration is just about 1%. So people are being fleeced of their money. So people are actually forced to sort of believe in machines. The second reason, I'm breaking the economic barrier. So I understand that the Indian population is going to be okay with affording that ₹100 report. So would that be a qualification wall, or would you say that that is a product market fit? So I have great customer stories from the end customer, who is the patient. Maybe I don't have such great stories from maybe particular hospitals, which are essentially out there to sort of create those huge bills for the patients. But the end customer, and I really believe that you have to take away some learnings from the market, and the market is teaching me at this point in time that my product is essentially made for the end customer. Of course, the channel to get to that customer will be B2B. So just want to understand, how does this fit in here? Is it a qualification wall or a product market fit?
So I think those 2 concepts are a little bit different, but let me explain. So essentially, we're not talking about product market fit. I'm assuming you have some kind of in this stage, I really call it as product solution fit as opposed to a product market fit, because you are trying to look for your product market fit really in the beginning. And at some point you get the product market fit when everything is falling clearly in place. But I think in your case, the challenge really is let's assume now, if you want to sell, you have to sell in very large quantities, right? So you cannot touch people one-on-one, correct? Which means I need to get many, many people to come to my site, listen to my story on their own time, and get sold. So therefore, in your case, I would want to get too many visitors. Now, how am I going to find those visitors? And I want to find the visitors who are really qualified, right? Because not everybody has this problem. So how do you get that qualification built into your whole website persona is important. In terms of where you find those visitors is important. And then once you do that, you can qualify whether, if those people have now expressed an interest, and maybe you have some kind of a trial that they're willing to go have a trial, or they're willing to buy some level of service that gives you a sense of, hey, are they qualified or not, right? And so I think it's a whole process. And when I talk a little bit, and one of the things you might see in the end is that maybe you're selling your product too cheap. Just because the cost of your product is low doesn't mean the cost of selling is low. You have to understand customer acquisition cost. If your customer acquisition cost is not paid for and only your product cost is paid for, in the end, you're not going to be a profitable company. So even though you think you can sell it for 100, you might find that your customer acquisition cost itself is 100, which means you cannot really sell it at 100. So we'll talk about that, but I think that's an important thing you have to understand. Many a times entrepreneurs think it's my cost and that's what matters. No. That's not the only thing that matters. Because for acquiring every new customer, you're going to pay some money. How much is that? In the beginning, it will be high, but at some point it has to stabilize. You still are going to advertise. You're still going to put some SEO effort. You're still going to have some marketing resources and so on and so forth. And all of those cost money and they have to be paid for. Okay. I don't know. I hope that answered some of your question, not fully, correct?
Yes, Paul, it did. And we sort of worked out the CAC as well. But initially, in the initial phases, it's very, very difficult to understand what the CAC is going to look like when you're just initially trying to monetize. But yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for that answer.
So I think
Mr. Singh, there's one more question on the chat.
Let me just answer her. So I think one of the jobs for you in this phase of the initial phase of the selling is to try to determine what will your CAC be, because right now your CAC is going to be through the roof, right? Because you need early customers and you're going to go all out to get them one way or another.
Agreed.
But after you've gotten first few customers, now you're going to put a process in place. That's your job to scale. Before you can scale, you need to really understand the CAC at that point. Right now, you can only guess. Yes, what's the other question, please?
This is from Harry. Harry, why don't you unmute yourself and ask, because I can't understand the context of the question.
Go ahead.
Harry, you there?
Yeah, I think he already answered it. He's was going to be talking about the tools later, right?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the tools. Yeah. Okay, so in sales, relationships matter. People, I think, is somebody saying something, or are you just unmuted and some background noise is coming? I don't know. I didn't.
Taking care of background noise. You're taking care of.
Okay. So in sales, relationships matter a lot because in the end, people buy from people. Even if you're buying for your company, what matters is the people and the relationship of the people. And the other thing that matters a lot is activity. Believe it or not, sales is a numbers game. Sales today is probably 10 times more complex than designing a product. I know as engineers, we do not like to agree with that statement, but a good sales team, it's grinding work. It needs a much more discipline than you may need in developing a product. And sales is transferring your enthusiasm to your prospects. And the one thing that is a biggest problem that entrepreneurs who are like me, engineers, we tend to overthink. We like to say, oh, I don't know if, let me perfect this. Oh, let me perfect this more before I go out. And what I'm going to tell you is, it doesn't matter. You will test it. And if it fails, you move on to the next message and the next way of doing something. Because sales is a numbers game. Sales is a game where you are going to experiment with few things to see what succeeds and why. So don't get caught up in it. Spend the time in doing more and more experiments, in doing more and more learning, because the faster you do that, the better off you will be. I think it says Hassan has a hand on. Hassan, do you have a question, please?
Yeah, so initially you said that your first initial customers are extremely important because, as they say, first impression is the last impression. But now you're saying that it's a sales number. So even if you fail, it doesn't matter. So now I'm confused because, you know,
I understand where your confusion is.
Yeah.
So I So I am trying to tell you that there are two aspects to it, right? So in the beginning, also sales is a numbers game, meaning you're going to, so let's assume for a minute, if you're going to sell a product for $1, you probably need initially 100 customers before you can say, I understand my market. If your product sells for $100,000, you need at least 5 customers before you can say, I now understand the process. So in order to even get to that 100 and that 5, you're going to need a lot of effort to get there. But afterwards, once you have those 5 and 100 customers, depending on how many do you need, now you need to multiply it. Now you've got something that works. And now you need to put in a process. You need to put in a discipline to multiply that effort what succeeded by 5 times, 10 times. That is what I'm talking about. Okay.
Now, can I clarify my question?
Sure.
I meant as in from the product side. So you talked about like how as engineers, we want to perfect our product, right? And obviously like you still see room for improvement and you might see something wrong with it. So should you like perfect it and then go in the market, or should you just go even if it's like a half-baked product initially?
So I think there are 2 schools of thought. There are companies which will, there are various, one school of thought is, hey, you build an MVP and you can actually win the market. I personally believe you cannot, win a market just by an MVP. MVP, unless and until you happen to have something which is so strong that 1 or 2 problems you solve, that there is nothing else out there, that there is no other alternate way to solve it, which normally doesn't happen, then in that case, maybe. But generally, MVP by itself is not sufficient. It's like if Tesla was selling an electric car and the rest of the car wasn't there, nobody would buy a Tesla car. So there is certain expectation of what a product should have. And then on top of that is what is your unique value proposition, which is the new features or the new problem that you are solving that you have provided. So that should shine, that should come through. And so, yeah, your product cannot be perfect ever, right? I mean, that's just nature of the beast because you're going to continue to improve. But there is a fine line between trying to decide when is it time to take the product out. Now, if your product initially, if you are not putting it in the general public, but you are with a very controlled thing, you are going to do it, yes, you can have the product which is not fully ready because you already understand what kind of customers you are catering to. Are they going to live with that issue or not? Okay. I see the hands up again, so please go ahead.
Hassan? Okay, he's got his hands down. There are 2 similar questions on the chat, Mr. Singh.
Sure.
One is, does this apply to diagnostic products? Cherry Chia from Thai UK is asking, and Fraddy from AltLearn, Andhra Pradesh is asking, is there a concrete formula to accurately understand the metrics? Is there like there are metrics that make customers buy my product, or are the metrics dynamic?
I didn't quite understand the metrics about that because every market has certain metrics, right? So there are certain metrics for every particular markets, and then your particular product is going to have its own metrics, which are going to be in the sort of the same realm, but you are going to develop your own numbers. So, like for example, if I were doing a product for medical diagnostic, I would know that, hey, generally in this market, the pricing goes at some number and, customers only buy direct from, you need a salesperson, for example, to be able to do the sale. Or maybe you are trying to disrupt it and it can be sold through online as well. So then now you are a pioneer in this and you're going to come up with your own metrics, for example. right? So the metrics are, very relative. Every industry segment has its own metrics, but then you're going to develop your own. Okay.
Cool. Cherry's question is, does this apply to diagnostic products?
I don't think it matters what product it is, right? Because every product has some of its unique things, but selling a product does not change. Marketing a product doesn't change because the basic concepts never change. Because at the end of every sale is a human being. Even if you're selling a B2B, which I will tell you in a minute, still at the end of this, there is a human being. And I'll address that in a couple of minutes again in more detail, okay? The other thing to understand is that not all activities generate the same result. By that, what I mean is, a lot of times if you meet somebody face-to-face, you had a handshake, it is a little bit more difficult for them to say no to you. People tend to do better in the face-to-face conversation. So in the beginning of your startup journey, try to be closer to the customer. Try to make physical contact if you can, because that will give you a very different perspective. And then obviously, telephone is another big tool, whether Zoom calls or whatever, and email, social media, discussion forums. And as you can see, it's easier to reach somebody on social media, but so is it easy for them to ignore you as well. Okay. I think this is Dalai Lama said that, which actually applies to sales, believe it or not. He says 2 ears, 1 mouth, use in that proportion. So when you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But if you listen, you may learn something new. So this is something that most people forget. And this is a study done by one of the companies where they found out that on an average, a salesperson talks about 50-50. 50% time a salesperson take and a 50% time they have the customers talk. But the most successful salespeople have their customers talk 60% and they talk 40%. I know as entrepreneurs, especially when we get passionate about our product, we just want to talk about our product. We just want to talk about our company. And we forget that we have to listen. We are not going to learn by talking. We're going to learn by listening. In fact, when we calculate, when I look at a good salesperson record, their record is always the salesperson who is a good listener does better than talker. So if and when you hire your first salesperson, see if they are a talker or a listener. If they are only talkers, don't hire them. Now, sales is obviously hard work. And believe it or not, I know there is a lot of things about, product-led growth where they say, oh yeah, it sells by itself. I'm sorry, I've been in the business for too long. Nothing sells by itself. And it is hard work. So you got to start now. You got to start soon and not wait. Any questions before I go to the next section of my presentation? Going once, going twice. All right. By the way, if you are interested, this is a very interesting video to watch. I've given you the link and you will get this presentation so you can watch it. Some question was raised earlier. If I'm selling to business, what happens? So actually selling to B2B is a little bit more complex because it is equal to the business as well as the B2C. Unlike a consumer product, in a B2B sense, you have a team of people that have to be convinced. And so selecting the right business in the beginning is important. The size of the company you go after, the industry segments you choose, and trying to understand the driver of your sales. And then people. So I'm not going to spend time on this, but here are some guidelines as to what kind of right business as a startup works best, and what kind of cycle of length of buying cycle it could be. And so you have to sort of account for all these things. And here's just an example. Like, this is a company that was trying to decide, hey, they were doing a big data product and they were trying to decide what segment should I choose. And obviously they found out that, and most of them, these are the companies that already use a big data a lot. So they went after them because their tool or their product was good for companies that already had big data adopted it in some sense. So this is just one way of trying to figure it out for your market. What is the right time? What is the right segment to go after? There is always a driver for a business to buy your product. And in my mind, there are 4 kinds of startups. One is what I call an insurance startup. An insurance startup could be a security company or something you need to buy out of fear, something you need to buy as an insurance policy. Those are all insurance startups. Or there is a government regulation coming and you have to be compliant with it. Those are all insurance startups. Now, majority of the companies seem to focus on the bottom one, which is the cost savings. And that is really the worst one to focus on. Why? Because, to give you a very good example, I had a gentleman come to me and said, I don't understand it. I am selling a product and, the current price of that product in the market is $100,000 and I can sell it for $10,000. I am saving so much money, but I can't get the IT guy to pay attention to me. The head of IT doesn't even want to give me 2 minutes. I said, okay, how much is the budget that he or she is dealing with? He said $100 million. I said, well, that answers your question. Because for him or her, you are just so small that even if you're giving the cost saving, it is not significant in his budget, and he's not going to take a chance on something new. And cost saving is always that thing you always fight. And so make sure your message does not go around cost savings only, unless and until you happen to be very significant component of cost savings. Like, for example, in my company, we focused on one deal on cost savings because out of a $300 million budget, we can save 10%. Now that $30 million is very significant budget to this department, and they will pay attention. But most startups need to find what I call the new revenue. Nobody minds new revenue. Everybody will give you the time of day if you change your messaging around new revenue, how you bring new revenue. And revenue is not always in dollars, right? Company might need a new revenue. If you think about Facebook, Facebook created a new revenue, meaning for consumers who could not who couldn't share their pictures very easily. That was their value add in the beginning. That was the new revenue they're creating. They were creating this whole new social thing where you were able to show off your things to other people. And then I see a lot of you are doing social good startups as well. So all of these are sort of, if you think about it at a very high level, you can put your company in one of these 4 brackets. Now, if you're looking at B2B buying process, it has got many players. This is a typical B2B buying cycle, which may have 5 or 6 players, an initiator and a decider, an influencer, user, gatekeeper, buyer. And so you have to understand your selling process. And as an entrepreneur, it is your job before you hire your first salespeople to be able to do certain sales, to understand these things very well. Otherwise, you will hire the wrong salespeople. And this is why it is really important that for the first few sales, you take care of it yourself. Now, this is just basically saying that individuals, at the end of the day, even in a B2B sense, it is a Maslow's hierarchy. After table stakes are there, technical and functional advantages are there, the final decision happens at the personal level, and that is important. So any questions before we go to the next section? No questions? Okay. So let's talk about the 6 steps to building.
I had a question.
Sure, go for it.
So if you're the social good type startup, how do you like sell it correctly? I suppose, like, because you can say, oh yeah, we'll save you money, or oh yeah, we'll provide a way for you to make money, or insurance. Oh yeah, we can protect you from losing money. But with social good, how would you talk about that?
Let me give you an example, right? Let's say I'm selling a recycling, or maybe, I am actually come up with a natural deodorant, which does not have aluminum, does not have all these so-called harmful chemicals. And, I'm trying to be also environment friendly and so on and so forth. Now, I need to come up with a messaging, right? So who am I going to target? So I am going to target people who really care about that message and are willing to pay much higher price, because right now my product costs more money to make than the product which has been in the market for hundreds of years. So they brought their cost down, but my cost is going to be really high. So I need to find the right type of people who are in the same social cause, who believe in the same cause that I believe in when I started that company. Because initially I need those people to be on my side. And so my target customer will be very different. And I know that they will not care so much about the pricing as much as about the key message that, hey, I am giving you something that you care a lot about. Does that answer your question? Yeah?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, so here is a simple process of building your sales. And most of it, even though it says B2B, but most of it will apply even to B2C. And so I'm going to walk through each of these steps. So the first step is to build your target accounts. Now, if your target account happens to be, a B2C market, you still need to figure out what is the right persona that my buyer is going to be. Am I selling to, I know some of you had a product for kids for, say, hearing impairment. Now for that, I have to say, who is my customer? Obviously, my customer is not the kid. My customer is the parent. And if you happen to be selling that product in the US, probably your customer is not even the parent. It might be the IEP, which is because in the US, schools have to provide that help to people who are, who may have a hearing impairment. So they have to actually help. So in that case, maybe the school might be a buyer, but the parent is an influencer. So it is really important to figure out what is the target customer for you. And then obviously, if you are doing a B2B, and like we said, let's assume you are going after companies of a certain size. And so, LinkedIn is a good source, ZoomInfo, there are other tools where you're really trying to figure out who are the right people in the right type of companies that I should target. And conversion of 1% is very typical. If you are lucky, your conversion may go up as high as 10%. And so if you look at your initial list and you see that there are 100 customers in your list, you have to figure out, how do I decide who is a likely prospect? And so I have to rate them. Maybe it is based on the size, maybe it's based on a certain problem, maybe it's based on a certain knowledge or information you have of the account, or maybe you figured out that they have an intent of buying something similar from some of these services as well. Now, as a startup, most of the time, it's very hard for you to buy all these tools unless you have money, because they cost a lot of money. LinkedIn, on the other hand, can be bought relatively inexpensively for 1 or 2 users. I think it's like $125 a month kind of service. So you can at least start to look at the type of people, the type of companies, and you can start to make some sense out of it. The important thing, like I said, is it is really important to build the target personas, to understand who is the buyer for you. What is their demographics? What is it that they care most about? Where do they likely hang out? If your target customers are, young audience, and you are trying to, and you're selling a B2C product, LinkedIn is the last place to be there. And in fact, Facebook might even be the bad place, because young people don't like to go to Facebook anymore. Maybe Instagram, maybe TikTok, or something else. So just trying to figure out, where is it that your users hang out? What is it that they get influenced by is really important for you to understand, because that is the information you're going to need to build your marketing programs. So you got to learn segmentation. So you got to segment your customers, you got to segment your markets, and we'll talk about some of these other things in a minute. So for startup segmentation, this book by this gentleman or by this lady, Susan, says it all. The startup segmentation, the riches are in niches, meaning you try to focus initially very, very narrow. Focus as narrow as possible in the beginning. Now, obviously, when you're showing this pitch to an investor, you're going to show them the whole world, right? The vision is very broad. Execution has to be narrow. If you think about Facebook, anybody know where did Facebook start? What market was the first one that they went after?
Harvard college students.
College students. Sorry? Okay, can you mute yourself, please, if you're not talking?
Someone, yeah, excuse me, who's that? Who's unmuted?
Yeah, if you can mute them, that'll be great.
Yeah, I understood.
Okay.
All good.
All right. So I think it is really, really important, right? Your vision has to be very broad, but your execution has to be narrow. So you think Facebook didn't have a grand plan in the beginning to conquer the world? They did. But they didn't go out and say, hey, let me just go to the world right now. They instead focus on first only the Ivy Leagues. Then they focused on EDU domains. After that, they went further. And so this is something that you have to determine for your business, because you want to go after the beginning, the markets where your likelihood of success is very high. Because once you have some successes in one market, it's easy to go to the next one. So figure out what that is. Constructing a message for your audience. Remember, I always said, put yourself in your customer's shoes. A lot of times we tend to do our own, buzzword bingo. We like to say, oh, we have this AI-based blah, 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 blah. And the customer says, huh? What the hell does it do for me? Nothing. So please give me a message that I can relate to. what is it? What is in it for me? Give me the benefit statement. Don't try to give me the buzzword bingo only. Yes, if you are selling to a developer, they love buzzword bingos. Give them all the buzzword bingo that you want because they like to buy the product based on that. But if you're not selling to a developer community or selling to an end user, they really want to know what is the problem you're solving for me? What's your message? What is the benefit I get? Okay. And all of this starts with your product. And I call that the 3 W's. You have to figure out who is your customer, what problem do you solve for them, or a new habit you create, and why are you best at it, and why now? If you can answer these 3 things, that's the first lesson of marketing. If you can get that right, you are probably already a genius. You solved a lot of your business problems. Believe me, it's very hard. It's not easy. But you have to get that right. It will take some time. You may not get it right away, but that is the knowledge of knowing your customer, right? And I'm not going to talk about these things. This is what should be in your website, do's and don'ts, but I'm not going to spend time on that right now. Then trying to figure out where your customers hang out, whether they hang out on LinkedIn or discussion groups or Snapchat or YouTube or whatever. All of that is really important because you are going to find your early customers if you are selling as low-end product easily over on those places than trying to find them in other areas. Now, you have to learn how to do lead generation. And the lead generation comes in 2 forms. One is the inbound marketing, and we'll talk about that, which has become totally digital, and the outbound marketing. Now, outbound marketing normally means you're going to have people calling cold, or if the email or social, and you may have a team of people doing that at some point where you are trying to really, you think these are the target customers, so you're trying to reach them. And generally companies do a mixture of inbound and outbound rather than only one. So let's talk about the digital marketing side of it, the inbound. So digital marketing is 2 pieces: assets that you create and the tactics and the distribution you use gives you some results. And you keep on measuring it and you keep on correcting it. And you may add more assets or you may change your tactics and distribution. So unlike in the olden days, every dollar spent on marketing should give you an output. And if it is not doing it, you should be able to make changes as you are going about it. So here are some of the things. And I don't expect you to become experts in all of these. There are some cases where you will have to hire some experts who can do a better job than you can. And in some cases, it is really important to understand these things more than anything else, so that when you hire somebody who you're going to manage, you know what to expect from them. So website is a very big asset for the companies. And in 2 things in website that is important is SEO and SEM. SEO stands for search engine optimization, which means you write the content. So Google finds you, finds your content and your website. Generally for startups, trying to rise and get a high search in the SEO is very, very hard. It takes about a year before you get this right. And however, that does not mean you shouldn't start it. You should start it as soon as you can. When you write a content, you have to be aware how to write the content appropriately. Now, these are, mind you, all of these, I conduct a 3-hour class on each of these topics. So it will be hard for me to go through this in the next 10 minutes, but I'm just giving you a very high level view. And search engine marketing, where you buy the ads based on certain keywords, and you could buy it on social sites like Facebook. You can buy it on LinkedIn. You can buy it on Google and Yahoo or whatever else your search engine thing is, maybe Bing. And you're always measuring. The tools that you use for measurement are like the analytics. Google Analytics comes for free. You should try to make sure that you can see if you are a company that needs a lot of people to come to your site. This is one tool you definitely need to be watching every single day. Social sites, there is organic social media marketing, where you need to have some expertise in how you get people interested. And then there is the inorganic one, where you actually buy some ads. And with every one of these social media tools, you get their analytics tools that you can use. Now, if you have a mobile app, you obviously need to learn how to deal with the app stores, because app store marketing is slightly different than most of the other website marketing. Now, you will keep on hearing word content. Content is king. And it is even more important for B2B or a new kind of a product, new kind of an idea. Content becomes really important. You use your content to educate the market. You use your content to establish thought leadership. And that ultimately results in increasing your market.
Dr. Singh, you're on mute. Sorry, Mr. Singh, you're on mute. I'm sorry. Hello?
Sorry, no. I just, there was some noise coming, so I just wanted to take care of it. I think building your customer database is going to be key. It is really important. There are various rules against who you can send an email to and who you can't. So trying to get an opt-in list created is really important. And so you have to figure out, how do you get people to give you their email addresses and permission to send them information? And that's where a lot of the marketing automation software and some of the CRM, like the Salesforce and others, come in handy as you build your databases. As a startup, PR is a very good resource if you can leverage it, but it takes a lot of expertise to do it right. And generally, it's a good idea to have a professional PR agency who can help you with that work rather than doing it on your own unless you are experienced in it. It's really important to figure out, who are you going to partner with? In every market, there is somebody who is going to benefit by partnering with you and vice versa. So trying to figure out who those people are, and try not to partner with people smaller than you. Try to find a partner who is bigger in the market, who is important, significant player in the market. And again, putting the right partnership marketing in place is really important. Now, reviews are important because, Amazon reviews don't happen by accident, or G2 Crowd or any of the other services. They don't happen by accident. You have to really work for it. You have to figure out a strategy as to how do you get your site to come up better, faster, and show up more. I think trade shows are back again after COVID, and it got converted to virtual, but trade show marketing is still huge. If you are selling a product which is generally more expensive, it becomes even more important because customers want to come and see you in some form or another. And so those should be all in your budget. So all this combination and trying to put the right amount of coverage and the budgets for these things is really important. And this is where you're going to be able to kind of figure out which resource you spend money in and what kind of CAC you're going to be able to do. So I'm sure there are many questions I left on this because I went on this really, really fast. I think we went through this. So what I'm going to tell you is this. Sales process is going to differ from stage to stage. I call this a 3-stage sales process. The first stage is founder-led sales, where no rules apply. And if you are doing a B2B enterprise sales, you need to have 2 to 5 sales. If you're doing a consumer product where you need thousands of users to make business, then you at least want to get 100 users. But the idea is for you to learn the sales process. The idea is for you to figure out what is the right time to hire an external salespeople. For you to find out what is the right message you're going to spend more resources on. And then what I call, you enter a sales-led sales process where you create a sales playbook where you start to hire some sales team, and a lot of experiments that have been conducted. You kind of conduct more experiments until you get it right. And then if you are successful, you go to the next one, which is process-led sales, where sky is the limit. You implement the sales book. Almost anybody in your organization should be able to implement this. And, this is when you really start to worry about your CAC. If your CAC is still high at that time, you're going to be in trouble. So that's a quick summary. With this, I'm going to stop and take questions. Let me stop sharing and see if I can take questions.
Cool. You can unmute and ask questions. Let me put,
the slideshow is shared online, right?
We will share it. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Any questions, folks?
Sana Rubab, you have your hands up. Why don't you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, in a B2B sales engine, you said that to sell an environmental friendly product, you would target the people with the same social cause. But sir, in Asian countries, we have public who are not even aware of the environmental friendly products and their benefits. So I think first thing would be the advertisement and to making them aware of the environment like friendly products and the harms that are like in the for the environment. So I think first of all, we should make them aware of it.
So you are absolutely right. Your job, you're championing a cause. But now the question is, you want to make people aware. So which type of people are likely to be more in tune with your message? Maybe not your grandfather, maybe not your father. Maybe people in your same age group might be more interested in that kind of a message than others. So trying to pick the right audience where your message is going to resonate is also as important. Otherwise, you'll waste a lot of resources. So you don't want to educate the whole market from day one because you just don't have the resources. So you want to find those champions who will then carry your message to the rest of the world. So you want to build that community. Community is really important. If you are doing a cause like an environmental cause, you have to find that community. You have to build that community. You got to educate that community and then hope that community will take the message forward, because you by yourself cannot take it unless you have infinite budget, which is unlikely.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Anyone else, folks?
So
I'm sorry.
So I have a question, sir. Like as a hub-based company, so we are working on medical device. So what is the approximate margin we need to keep for our products, sir? Because we are going to have a one-time revenue from our hardware product. So what is the approximate margin we need to keep for our products, sir? If it's a 50%, 100%, how much is the approximate value we need to keep, sir?
So let me ask you, have you thought about, is there also a service component where you can charge people as well besides a one-time sale?
No, sir. Like we can't provide them a service. That only thing is we can replace their products because things we are using a hardware is an SMD based, so we can't service those things. If they got repaired, they need to replace their product.
And how often does it break?
Like twice or once in a 3 years, 4 years, sir.
So what if you offer them, they can buy a lifetime service provided they pay you X amount of rupees per year?
So what's not able to get it, sir?
So one is, so you want to do a sale one time, right?
Yes, sir.
But if you believe that your product is going to, let's say, look at Apple, right? Very simple example. Now, Apple sells me the product. In addition to that, I can buy a service contract from them for like $200 a year for 2 years, that if anything breaks down in that time frame,
okay, sir,
they will replace or help me with this in some form, like even if I break the phone. So my point is, you got to figure that out now, not later. Now, in terms of your gross margin, generally for a startup, I expect the gross margin to be in the 60, in a hardware product to be in excess of 60%. But you should not be deciding it based on that. You should be deciding in what your market is going to bear and the value you are bringing. If you bring in a very significant value, don't try to undersell. Don't try to undercut your price. In the beginning, you don't need to. As your volume builds, because initial users are not going to come to you because of low price. They're going to come to you because you're solving a problem in a more unique way, and they're willing to pay the price. So don't undercut yourself right in the beginning. Later on, when you want to expand the market, when your costs go down, you can actually go down to the next level of market and you will reduce the price, but you don't need to do it right away. Did that answer both of your questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Actually, I have one more question which has a follow-up, sir. Yes.
Go ahead.
Our product is for a by birth and conjunctive hearing loss patients, sir. So our end user is a hearing loss patient, but our customer is an audiologist or an ENT doctor who can prefer our product for their hearing loss. But what the problem we are facing is, like the existing solution, which has a implantable solutions, has provide them a more revenue and margin, like while refer their implantations, because they can earn from their doing ENT surgeries, and also they have a high margin with their refer implantable solutions, high commission while they refer implantable solutions. So how we can start,
how do you do it?
Those to our sales, sir?
So you need to do a two-step process. You need to educate your customer as well as the audiologist, because your customer should be asking the audiologist, hey, why can't I use this? Right? So you need a two-step attack.
Okay, sir.
You need to educate people about these problems and that there is a better solution about it. And then at the same time, you got to make sure that the doctor doesn't say, oh, this product is not good, right? And the other thing is, so at the end of the day, could you give doctor the same margin? If the market is willing to bear a higher price and you give the doctor the same margin, who cares? Like if, let's say the current product gives them 30% margin and you say, I'll give you 50% margin, but the amount of rupees you will make is same, audiologist doesn't care. At that point, you become neutral.
Yes.
So that's another way to think about it.
Okay, sure, sir.
Make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
I think someone had unmuted earlier. I think was it Soumya? You?
Yeah, it was
Yes,
me.
Hasan. Okay, we'll go ladies first. Soumya, please go ahead.
Okay, great. So yeah, Paul, great presentation. My question is that even if you think that you have a B2C product, would you suggest that the process should fundamentally be B2B2C? Because, the stakes are really high in a B2C model because, you just get one chance to prove your credibility in the market. So what are your thoughts on that?
So look, I think there are certain products that lend themselves very well to, like, for example, I can go sell to a hospital because they will buy 100 units of the same thing, as opposed to me selling an individual unit to every user, right? There is always that motivation. But it depends really on the product. It's very hard to say. And sometimes that might be your innovation, that the customer today buys only in a certain fashion, and you're going to sell it in a little different distribution pattern. And that might become your differentiation. So without knowing the details, it's hard for me to give you the exact answer. But it's an experimentation that you have to figure out. And then you are going to, see what works for you. I mean, there is always an industry norm, but many entrepreneurs come in and disturb that norm. Sorry.
Would you agree that the stakes are really high in terms of credibility? You just get one chance to prove your credibility if you're going B2C, right? So would you agree on that?
No. I mean, that's not true. You get n number of chances whether you're going B2B or B2C. It doesn't matter. Because, many companies, I mean, if I look at companies, so let's look at Dropbox. Dropbox came in, they had one thing better than almost anybody else. And even today, that is the best thing that they have. They can do a sync of the files faster than any of their competition. The rest of the features, probably same. And in fact, they had only 60% of the rest of the features. But they hung themselves on that feature alone. And that they delivered very over this. You get chances, but you have to earn that respect from the market. So when you give a promise to the market, make sure you deliver that promise. Don't promise them the whole world necessarily right away, and deliver that promise and then continue to build, because everybody understands Rome was not built in a day. You're not going to come out with a product release 1.0 and it is going to have every bells and whistle in there. No, it's not possible. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, Jack Zeller, you have a question, please.
Yeah, I do. So just for context, my company is addressing a problem in the US landscaping services space. We see the biggest problem in that market being labor. And so we're working to develop an autonomous lawnmower to help address this labor issue, as well as, some ancillary benefits of, reduction of costs, increasing margins, and then, environmental benefits of shifting to all electric. But one thing I'm having trouble with is figuring out who from our target customers to target. So, these target customers would be businesses, landscapers, distributors, big box retailers. Could you maybe provide some advice on just kind of figuring out who within that hierarchy to, figure out how to get in touch with them, and then, fleshing out who that would actually be?
So I think I would always tell you one thing: don't confuse customers with distribution.
Okay.
Right? Because what is the right distribution mechanism you will select correctly. But first thing is to figure out who is really the customer, who is going to be the buyer, who has the most to gain from your product. So if it is the farmer, or if it is the landscaper, or if it is the homeowner, or whoever it is, that is the first one you have to sell to. Right? So first you identify them, because the channel will get built over time. Once your customers start demanding your product, channel will come to you, don't worry. Because their job is to supply whatever their customers want. If they start to see that you can actually sell online and don't need them, pretty soon they want to come to you. So I won't worry about that aspect. at a startup, I first want to worry about who is the customer who really loves me, and I'm going to sell to them. Then I'll figure out how they buy. And maybe they buy through a channel, and I'll make my product available through that channel or give them an option to buy direct. Because today, I mean, in US, anything can be sold direct. Those days are gone.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Sure. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, so you mentioned going after the customer who really has the most to gain from your product. For reference, high level overview, we're making a golf training aid. But the people who would be most likely to buy our product, putting ourselves in the greatest chance of success, are actually going to be golf instructors. But the people who are going to get the most value out of it would be golf players. How do we go about balancing, people getting the most value versus most likely to buy for our first sales?
So in the golf business, I have some arrows in my back from one of the companies I invested in. And they were selling to the golf instructor, hoping to tell them that, hey, I can give you more money. And so you can make more money by using my product and training the users. And what we found is that it really didn't work. Why it didn't work is because majority of the people who are teaching golf have been doing it for years and years and are not ready for change. So we actually then focus on the younger coaches who are really more hungry, who are more technology savvy, who are willing to go look at these new things. And then obviously you have to sell to the player as well. Even though you're not distributing directly to the player, you're distributing through the coaches. But the player has to be also aware of your existence, because you want to make sure that you want to create a pull. Don't always have push. As startups don't succeed with the push sales. Startups always succeed with the pull sales, where you have created enough demand that people are demanding your product. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
A little bit. I think there's definitely some things to work out about like who to target first. And obviously it sounds like you have a wealth of knowledge here that I would really appreciate it if we could, have a conversation maybe offline. Well, we don't have everybody here, but just since you have so much experience, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, we can talk offline.
Thank you.
All right,
I put the LinkedIn link of Mr. Singh on the chat, Ryan, and maybe you could send him a note on LinkedIn, and then both of you could connect.
And when you when you send me a connection request, please put the reference of where we had that conversation, so it will put a context around it. Otherwise, I normally don't accept the invites. Hassan, please. Sure.
Yes.
Hassan.
So I have a so I have a follow-up question on the cost side. So in a market where you don't have a direct competitor, you do have competitors, but not in your category. So so I have created a new category. So in terms of pricing the product, if there's no direct competition, can you price it 4 or 5x more than what the customers are already paying for
you offer
other products?
20 times benefit? Do you offer 20 times the benefit of others?
Yes.
Okay. Then you sell your benefit, your value. If that is indeed true, but the value lies in the eye of the beholder, not in your eyes. You think so, but you have to make sure that your users perceive the same value. If they do, yes. You can ask whatever price.
So how do you get that answer without your own bias?
You have to really talk to your customers, and you have to try to be as unbiased as you can be. Because remember, you think that the customer is solving that problem because without you, they're still solving that problem somehow. Right? So you got to understand, what do they think? Do they really feel that those are really big challenges that you are solving? And how big are those challenges in the price performance that they're willing to pay for? If they're not willing to pay for that at the same rate, then maybe you won't be able to get 5x, right?
And what would you say about if the customer, since it's a new product, and they're not familiar with it, if you have to educate your customer?
So obviously, education is a very important key for a lot of startups, especially if you're trying to do a new category. New category building is very hard. Okay, let me be honest. But when you get it right, it has a magic that no other product category will. But setting up a segment, a new segment, is very hard. And so therefore, you got to figure out who are the influencers in your market that would help you set up that new category. So not only you focus on the user, but you need to figure out those influencers. So if you're doing flossing, okay, who could be the possible? Maybe it's dentist an influencer.
Yeah. So we did customer. Yeah. So we did customer discovery this past summer, and what we found out was we went through dental schools. So they have huge networks where they're not only influencers but also sales channels as well. And also in another influencer, or maybe like a validator, would be if you could get approval stamps from ADA or FDA, even though they're not required.
Point is, before you get there, it will cost you a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
As a startup, I need to preserve my resources too. So you need to focus on what is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because your first most important thing is getting your first 100 sales. You know, the next level of users. So remember, there is the curve, the chasm, right? You are trying to find out initially the early adopters. You're not looking for late risers. You will have enough time to go after them. Right now, I'm only worried about early adopters. So figure out where the early adopters are. And early adopters also pay higher money.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Dr. Lopez is here and he's activating a poll. Those of you who are listening to the questions, you could also answer the poll simultaneously. Yes, Prashant, your question, please.
Yeah. So how to retain your customers? You know that you cannot come up with the features that are like your competitors are there in the market already there. So they are there, and now you want to have your own place there. But once you have it, you want to retain that. So could you please help me here in how
Sure.
can I retain?
Is your product a software product or a hardware product?
Yeah, it's a medical device, hardware product.
So I think, so I think you should think about how do I make, not even retain this customer, how do I make them my champions, right? So it's a matter of constantly communicating with your customers. Like as you bring new features out, keep them informed. As you bring something new, you gotta keep in front of them. So make sure you build your email list with these existing customers. You might send them a newsletter as you grow a little bit bigger. But if you are smaller, at least send a personal email from time to time. So, there is one startup I remember where, what they used to do very simply is there was a founder letter in the package, which added that really personal touch. And to follow up with that,
we are not able to hear you, Singh.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Mr. Singh, are you there?
So I think,
all good. Keep going, Paul.
Okay. So I think that the key really what they did, which is a good lesson for you, is they created this personal interaction where every time you open that box, there is a letter from the founder which says, here is my vision, which is why I went to this. I want to solve this problem, and I need your cooperation to help me solve this problem. And then they continue to work with them. And then they will engage with their customers constantly. They will even make calls to them. And therefore, the first few customers really felt as part of the team. And then once you do that, and then as you grow bigger, you obviously will have to hire teams of people who are going to provide the customer success aspects. But right now we are worried about trying to get the existing customers to become our champions, to stay with us. So focus on that and listen to them constantly. If they have a problem, if they issue some report of something being not right, talk to them. If sometimes they go on a social media and start, a lot of times you see on Amazon where you buy a product and they say, hey, before you put a review, please call us. And so those are the kinds of things you have to figure out how to do with your customers. The more you communicate with them, the better off you will be. Okay. All right, one last question. Anybody else? I think Prashant Shukla, you already asked, right? Okay. All right, folks, I think we have reached, there's one more. Okay. I guess from San Jose, so I have to answer it. Samir, go for it.
Dr. Singh, really nice to meet you, and a great presentation, Mr. Singh. So just to give a background, our company started as Airbnb of parking. So we had property owners listing their spaces like churches and restaurants, and then drivers used to get guaranteed spots. And then during the COVID, since nobody needed that kind of parking, we pivoted to a B2B model as well. My question is, we had a great network effect on our B2C sales. We still have, where churches refer churches and hotels refer hotels. On the B2B side, in your experience, have you seen like a network effect where the contract size is like 100K a year? And have you seen customers referring each other? And if yes, what steps can we take from now to build that kind of network effect, even on the enterprise side?
So how are you different than Spot Hero?
Spot Hero does public garages, Mr. Singh. So what we do is we have churches and these private property owners whose spaces are just collecting dust. So they rent the spaces on our app and then drivers book them.
So do you create a social message around it? Like, support your church or something like that?
Yeah, we do. We actually, whenever we contact churches, it's more about, hey, you can help your local community by renting the spaces. And then local businesses like hotels and restaurants can also rent the spaces and then get some money out of it. So it's more about helping the local economy grow together while earning revenue out of the spaces. So we do that whenever we pitch to our property owners. On the enterprise side, Mr. Singh, I'm talking about pitching to like universities directly. We offer them a platform where they can monitor their parking lots, have autonomous enforcement solutions, and e-permits. Our product extended a lot more since COVID. And we already have a contract with one university for the next 5 years. It's 100K a year. But I was just thinking on the enterprise SaaS models, where the sales cycle is usually 6 to 12 months at least, how to build a kind of network effect where I can shorter this sales cycle more, rather than, okay, we need to fill a lot more pipeline to get those sales.
So I think, there is no magic formula, unfortunately, right? Like I said, sales is hard work. And so, but the only thing is, as you do more and more sales, the next sales become easier and easier, because you get a learning from each of those that you apply to your next sale, right? And also, as you get 1 or 2 sales closed, you have a reference, and monkey see what monkey do. So that reference goes a long way for somebody else to buy it, because there are only few people who will buy from you when they don't know you. And then afterwards, as you say, oh, I've already signed university A and B, suddenly the C wants to talk to you.
Okay. Got it.
First few are hard, but once you have that, now you know that this university, and essentially all universities compete with each other at one level or another.
Yeah.
And then somebody else has done it, therefore I am also ready to talk to you.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you,
Cool.
everyone.
So if you don't have questions, Dr. Lopez, you're on mute.
Paul, you did it again. Lots of 4s and 5s on the scale of how useful it is. So you had clients today, college students, and on their behalf, thank you for scoring a 4.5 on average on a 5-point scale, and also doing it while you're traveling in India with all the technology stuff you had to go over. But I believe one of our co-chairs, Ravi Puli from the board of Thai DC, wants to thank you. So thanks so much. Stick around for another 5 minutes. Ravi, all yours.
Hello, Paul. It's great to have your session. I joined a little late, but I've been throughout the session, and I, of course, know about the great work you are doing in Silicon Valley. So I'm also helping the TiCon Youth Track, running an innovative solutions contest. So all the students, please try and participate. There is a $5,000 cash prize for any of the solutions you have in the 5 categories. Pradeep, if you could please send that link once again in this chat group. And I want to request all the students to spread and also join. And I want to personally thank you, Paul. It's so valuable to the founders. As I'm a first-generation entrepreneur, I know how it is. And I just want to take a moment to thank you again. Looking forward. And by the way, I'm one of the 4 co-chairs on the program working with Paul in this university program. And I also run the Thai DC program. So hopefully we will invite you to DC at some point.
And in the meantime, given that at the Academy Awards, we all learned to say thank you with our hands. So I'm going to ask, because I think Pradeep wants to take a picture. Not that way, Pradeep. No, that is not American Sign Language. So let's all do this. This is the American Sign Language for thank you and applause. So let's all turn
and if you could all put your videos on, put your videos on so I can get my
The winning movie was Coda, so I'm hoping you all learned that from the Oscars instead of the part of the Oscars we shouldn't be learning from, right?
Put your videos on. Put your videos on. Don't be shy if you're sleepy on the Indian subcontinent, and if you're sleepy on the American subcontinent for an early morning thing. Let me see those smiling faces.
That was workshop number 1. Paul, we made you our opening batsman in Indian cricket language. So you did it again. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Lopez. And thank you so much, Paul Singh. It was wonderful. And the scores in the feedback form reflect that as well. This was the first session of the workshop. The next one is lined up on next Saturday. It is divided into 2 parts, one for the Eastern cohort and one for the Western cohort, because it's primarily to do with finance and money. The timings are at 5 p.m. IST for the Eastern cohort, so that would be 4:30 p.m. Pakistan time. And for the West Coast, it's at 8 p.m. IST, which is 10:30 a.m. EDT. You can register for both. There's no restriction on you joining either one. But of course, some of the concepts may be very particular to the geography that you are in. At the same time, it's a Saturday, and if you do have the time, do attend both. We have 2 amazing speakers lined up for you, and you can ask all your questions that you wanted to do about your finance-based concepts that you do not understand, or the ones you understand and you don't know why others don't understand. So please go ahead and join us those workshops. If there's any other query, you can always mail us at university@thai.org. Some of you have started posting questions. At the same time, because I'm the PR guy, so we have put out these posters on the WhatsApp cohort for each team. Some teams, your posters are just on the way. In fact, right now someone asked, right? So there are these 2 posters. One, this is for the Toronto team, and this one's for the Dubai team. Dubai team, you're here. So I hope you have done justice to your poster. So please go ahead and share this. Whenever you share it, please tag Thai University either on LinkedIn or Instagram. I'm like those video jockeys. Don't forget to share and like and tweet and retweet what we are saying. And keep entrepreneuring. Dr. Lopez, anything else to close, or we can close? We are at 9:55 IST. Wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful having you here, and look forward to seeing you next Saturday. Bye-bye.